The stadium lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across the empty field as Ethan Parker stood frozen, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. He clutched his sketchbook, the pages filled with half-finished drawings of a boy he could never stop thinking about: Jake Sullivan, the soccer captain whose smile lit up the world. Tonight, Jake had asked him to stay after practice, and the weight of that request felt like it could shatter Ethan's carefully guarded heart. It was senior year at Lincoln High, a sprawling school in suburban Colorado where the air always smelled faintly of pine and ambition. Ethan, a lanky art kid with wire-rimmed glasses and a quiet voice, had spent most of his life blending into the background. He wasn't invisible, not exactly just unnoticed. The kind of guy who could slip through a crowded hallway without turning a single head. His world was his sketchbook, where he poured out dreams and fears in sweeping lines and smudged charcoal. But this year, everything changed. Jake Sullivan, the golden boy of the soccer team, had started calling him Lucky after Ethan sketched a portrait of him mid-game, capturing the fierce joy in his eyes as he scored the winning goal. That nickname, tossed out with a grin during a chance encounter in the art room, had sparked something Ethan couldn't name, a spark that felt dangerous and alive. Jake was everything Ethan wasn't: bold, charismatic, the kind of guy who could command a room with a laugh. His dark hair fell in messy waves, and his hazel eyes seemed to hold secrets only Ethan noticed. As captain of the Lincoln Hawks, Jake carried the weight of the team's championship hopes, and the whole school adored him for it. But it was the way Jake looked at Ethan really looked, like he saw past the glasses and the shy smile that made Ethan's world tilt. It started small, Jake lingering after practice to talk, asking about Ethan's drawings, even slipping him a protein bar when he noticed Ethan skipping lunch to sketch. "Gotta keep my lucky charm fueled," Jake would say, winking, and Ethan would blush so hard he thought he'd combust. Tonight, though, was different. The field was empty, the bleachers silent, and Jake stood closer than ever, his breath visible in the chilly September air. "You ever think about what happens after this?" Jake asked, his voice low, almost nervous. Ethan's fingers tightened on his sketchbook, his mind racing. "After what?" "High school. The season. Us." He didn't dare ask, but the question hung between them like a live wire. I don't know," Ethan stammered, pushing his glasses up his nose. "I guess I just draw what I see. What's in front of me." His eyes flicked to Jake's, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just them two boys on the edge of something unspoken. Jake stepped closer, his cleats crunching on the grass. "You see me, don't you?" he said, softer now, his voice carrying a weight Ethan felt in his bones. "Not just the captain, not the guy everyone cheers for. Me." Ethan's heart stuttered. He wanted to say yes, to confess that every sketch, every line, was a love letter to Jake. But fear clawed at him, fear of what it meant, of what the world would think, of breaking the fragile thing growing between them. Lincoln wasn't a cruel place, but it wasn't kind either. Whispers followed kids who didn't fit the mold, and Ethan had heard them all his life. Jake, though, was untouchable, or so Ethan thought. Before he could answer, a shout broke the moment. "Sullivan, you still out here?" It was Coach Ramirez, his voice booming from the locker room. Jake's shoulders tensed, but he didn't move away. Instead, he reached out, his fingers grazing Ethan's wrist, a touch so brief it might have been a dream. "Meet me tomorrow," Jake whispered. "Same time, same place. I need to tell you something." Then he was gone, jogging toward the locker room, leaving Ethan alone with his racing heart and a sketchbook that felt heavier than ever. The next day, Ethan couldn't focus. His AP English teacher droned on about symbolism in The Great Gatsby, But all Ethan could think about was Jake's touch. The way his voice had cracked when he said me. By the time practice rolled around, Ethan was a mess of nerves, his pencil shaking as he tried to sketch in the bleachers. He'd always watched Jake's games from afar, sketching the way he moved fluid, powerful, alive. But now, knowing Jake wanted him there, it felt different. Intimate. When practice ended, Ethan lingered, his stomach twisting as Jake approached, his jersey clinging to his sweat-damp skin. "You came," Jake said, grinning, but there was something new in his eyes' vulnerability. Maybe, or fear. He led Ethan to a quiet corner of the field, away from prying eyes, and sat on the grass, patting the spot beside him. Ethan sat, clutching his sketchbook like a shield. "I've been thinking about you," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not just as my lucky charm. As more." He looked away, his jaw tight. "I know it's complicated. My dad, the team, the whole damn town, they expect me to be someone I'm not sure I am." Ethan's breath caught. He'd spent so long hiding his own feelings, burying them in sketches and silence, that hearing Jake say this felt like a door swinging open. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice trembling. Jake turned to him, his eyes fierce and soft all at once. "I'm saying I'm tired of pretending. I'm saying I see you, Ethan, and I don't want to look away." For a moment, they just stared, the world fading to nothing but the space between them. Then Jake leaned in, and Ethan's heart stopped as their lips brushed a tentative, electric kiss that tasted like grass and possibility. It was over in a second, but it changed everything. As Ethan walked home that night, his mind buzzed with joy and terror. He'd never felt so alive. But the weight of Jake's words about his dad, the team, the town lining it. Lincoln wasn't ready for this, and neither was Ethan. But as he opened his sketchbook and saw Jake's face staring back from every page, he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't ready to let go. The weeks that followed were a blur of stolen moments and secret glances. Ethan and Jake carved out a fragile world of their own, meeting after practice in the shadowed corners of the soccer field or sneaking away to the old oak grove behind the school. Each touch, each whispered word, felt like a rebellion against the unspoken rules of Lincoln High. Ethan's sketchbook filled with new drawings, Jake laughing under the stars. Jake's hand curled around his. Jake's eyes bright with a love Ethan was only beginning to understand. But the world outside their bubble was relentless. Jake's dad, Tom Sullivan, was a former Marine and the kind of man who saw weakness as a personal insult. He'd been at every game, shouting from the stands, his voice a constant reminder of the pressure Jake carried. "You're the best, son," he'd bellow. But Ethan noticed the way Jake's shoulders slumped afterward, as if the praise was a weight he couldn't bear. Tom didn't know about Ethan. Not yet. But his shadow loomed over every moment they stole together. At school, the rumors started small. A teammate caught Jake lingering too long near Ethan in the cafeteria. Another saw them walking too close in the parking lot. "What's with you and the art kid?" one of Jake's teammates, Ryan, asked one day, his tone half joking, half suspicious. Jake laughed it off, but Ethan saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. It was a reminder that their secret wasn't safe, not in a town where different was a dirty word. Ethan tried to focus on the good. Like the night Jake showed up at his house, tossing pebbles at his window like some rom-com cliché. Ethan's mom was working the night shift at the hospital, so they had the place to themselves. They sprawled on Ethan's bed, sharing earbuds and listening to Jake's favorite indie band, the music weaving a cocoon around them. "I wrote something for you," Jake said, pulling a crumpled paper from his pocket. It was a poem, clumsy but earnest, about a boy who made the world brighter. Ethan's eyes stung as he read it, And when Jake kissed him, it felt like a promise. But promises were hard to keep. The Hawks were on a winning streak, and Jake was under more scrutiny than ever. College scouts were circling, and Tom was pushing Jake toward a scholarship at a big-name school. "You're going places, kid," Tom said one night after a game, clapping Jake on the back. Ethan, watching from the bleachers, felt a pang of dread. Where did he fit in that future? The tension came to a head at the regional semifinals. The stands were packed, the air electric with anticipation. Ethan sat in his usual spot, sketchbook open, capturing Jake's every move. The game was brutal, tied at 1-1 in the final minutes, and Jake was everywhere sprinting, tackling, fighting for the win. When he scored the game-winning goal, the crowd erupted, and Ethan's heart swelled with pride. But then he saw Tom storm onto the field, grabbing Jake's arm and pulling him aside. Ethan couldn't hear the words, but Jake's face said enough: pale, strained, like he was shrinking under his father's grip. After the game, Jake found Ethan in their usual spot by the oak grove. "He knows," Jake said, his voice hollow. "Someone told him they saw us. He's pissed. Ethan. He thinks you're distracting me." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What did you say?" "I told him it's not like that," Jake said, but his eyes wouldn't meet Ethan's. "I said you're just a friend." The words cut deeper than Ethan expected. He wanted to scream, to ask why Jake couldn't just tell the truth, but the fear in Jake's eyes stopped him. "What do we do?" Ethan asked instead, his voice small. "I don't know," Jake admitted. "But I'm not giving you up. Not yet." They sat in silence, the night pressing in around them. Ethan wanted to believe Jake, but doubt gnawed at him. He'd always known this was risky, that loving Jake meant stepping into a world that might not accept them. But as Jake reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they could fight for this. Maybe they were stronger than the whispers and the expectations. The next day, though, everything unraveled. Ethan was in the art room, working on a mural for the school's fall festival, when Ryan and a few other teammates cornered him. "You're messing with Jake's head," Ryan said, his voice low and menacing. "He's got a shot at a scholarship, and you're dragging him down." Ethan's heart raced, but he stood his ground. "I'm not dragging him anywhere. He's my friend." Ryan smirked, stepping closer. "Friend? Huh? That's not what people are saying." Before Ethan could respond, Jake appeared in the doorway, his face a storm of emotions. "Back off, Ryan," he said, his voice sharp. Ryan hesitated, then shrugged and left with the others. But the damage was done. The whispers were growing louder, and Ethan could feel the walls closing in. That night, Jake texted him, "Meet me at the field. We need to talk." Ethan's heart sank as he read the words. He knew that tone, that urgency. Whatever was coming, it wasn't good. The soccer field was a sea of shadows under the moonless sky, and Ethan's sneakers sank into the damp grass as he approached. Jake was already there, pacing, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. The air between them crackled with tension, and Ethan's chest tightened with a mix of hope and dread. He'd spent the day replaying Ryan's words, the way Jake had defended him but hadn't denied the rumors. What did it mean? Was Jake ready to fight for them, or was he about to break Ethan's heart? "Ethan," Jake said, stopping when he saw him. His voice was raw, like he'd been arguing with himself all day. "I'm sorry about earlier. Ryan's an idiot, but he's not entirely wrong." Ethan's breath hitched. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jake ran a hand through his hair, his eyes darting away. "This suit's messing with my head. I can't focus. The scouts, my dad, the team, they're all watching me, waiting for me to screw up. And I keep thinking about you. All the time. And He trailed off, his voice breaking. Ethan felt like he'd been punched. So I'm a distraction? He asked, his voice barely steady. Is that what you're saying? No. Jake's eyes snapped to his, fierce and desperate. You're the only thing that makes sense right now. But it's not that simple. My dad is talking about sending me to some football camp in Texas over the summer. To fix me. He thinks this is a phase. That I'm confused. Ethan's heart twisted. He'd known Tom was intense. But this was something else, something cruel. What did you tell him? He asked, afraid of the answer. I told him he's wrong, Jake said, stepping closer. But he doesn't listen. He never listens. And the team, they're starting to notice. If this gets out, Ethan, it could ruin everything. My scholarship. My future. Your future. Ethan cut in, his voice sharp with hurt. What about ours? Jake froze, his eyes wide. For a moment, they just stood there, the silence heavy with everything they hadn't said. Then Jake reached out, pulling Ethan into a hug that felt like an apology and a plea all at once. I don't know how to do this, Jake whispered against his shoulder. But I don't want to lose you. Ethan clung to him, his anger melting into something softer, more fragile. Then don't, he said. We'll figure it out. Together. But figuring it out wasn't easy. The next few weeks were a tightrope walk. They were careful avoiding each other at school, texting only late at night. Ethan poured his feelings into his sketchbook, drawing Jake in moments of quiet strength, Jake tying his cleats, Jake laughing at a bad joke, Jake looking at him like he was the only person in the world. But the secrecy was suffocating, and Ethan could feel Jake pulling away, torn between love and fear. The breaking point came at the state championship. The Hawks were facing their toughest opponent yet, and the whole town had turned out to watch. Ethan sat in the bleachers, his sketchbook hidden under his jacket, his heart pounding as Jake led the team onto the field. He played like a man possessed, every move precise, every goal a defiance of the pressure crushing him. When the final whistle blew, the Hawks had won, and the crowd surged onto the field, chanting Jake's name. Ethan stayed back, watching from a distance as Tom enveloped Jake in a bear hug, his pride palpable. But then Jake's eyes found Ethan's across the crowd, and for a moment, everything else faded. Jake broke away from his dad and jogged toward him, ignoring the confused looks from his teammates. You're here, Jake said, breathless, his smile bright enough to rival the stadium lights. Always, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. He wanted to reach out, to pull Jake close, but the crowd was too close, the eyes too many. Jake seemed to sense it too. He glanced back at his dad, then at Ethan, his expression torn. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice low. But not here. Meet me at the Oak Grove tonight. Ethan nodded, his heart racing with a mix of hope and fear. As he watched Jake return to the celebration, he couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming, something that could either save them or break them apart. That night, the Oak Grove was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of pine and earth. Jake was already there, sitting on a fallen log, his face shadowed. I got the scholarship, he said as Ethan approached. Full ride to UCLA. It's everything I've worked for. Ethan's heart sank, but he forced a smile. That's amazing, Jake. You deserve it. Jake shook his head, his eyes glistening. It doesn't feel amazing. Not if it means leaving you. He stood, closing the distance between them. I told my dad about us. Everything. He didn't take it well. Said I'm throwing my life away. That I need to focus on what matters. Ethan's chest ached. And what do you think matters? You, Jake said, his voice fierce. You matter, Ethan. More than any scholarship. More than my dad's approval. I'm done hiding. Ethan's eyes burned with tears. He wanted to believe Jake, to trust that they could face the world together. But the fear was still there, a shadow that wouldn't let go. What happens now? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jake took his hand, his grip steady. We fight. For us. For who we are. I don't know what it'll look like, but I know I want you in it. The months that followed were a storm of change. Jake's decision to come out to his dad sparked a ripple effect, one that tested their love in ways Ethan hadn't imagined. Tom's reaction was brutal days of silence followed by a shouting match that left Jake crashing on Ethan's couch for a week. But Jake didn't back down. He started being open about their relationship, holding Ethan's hand in the school parking lot, sitting with him at lunch, daring anyone to say something. Some did whispers, glares. A few cruel notes slipped into Ethan's locker, but others surprised them. The art teacher, Ms. Harper, pulled Ethan aside to say she was proud of him. A few of Jake's teammates, including a quiet defender named Lucas, started inviting Ethan to team hangouts, treating him like one of their own. It wasn't perfect. The championship glow faded, and Jake faced pressure from all side scouts questioning his focus, his dad threatening to cut him off, the town gossiping about the golden boy who'd gone astray. But Jake and Ethan leaned on each other. Ethan's mom, a no-nonsense nurse who'd always known her son was different, welcomed Jake with open arms, cooking him pancakes and telling him he was family. Those moments, quiet dinners, late-night talks, Jake doodling terrible stick figures in Ethan's sketchbook became their anchor. As graduation loomed, the future felt both terrifying and possible. Jake's scholarship was still his, but he'd chosen to defer for a year, wanting to stay close to Ethan and figure out who he was without his dad's shadow. Ethan, meanwhile, got accepted to an art program in Denver, close enough that they could make it work. They spent their last weeks of high school stealing every moment they could, driving to the mountains to watch the stars, kissing in the rain after a late practice, promising each other they'd face whatever came next together. The turning point came at the senior prom. Ethan hadn't wanted to go, too afraid of the stares, but Jake insisted. We're not hiding anymore, he said, and Ethan couldn't say no to the fire in his eyes. They walked into the gym hand in hand, Jake in a sharp black suit, Ethan in a thrifted jacket covered in paint splatters. The room went quiet for a moment, heads turning, but then the music started, and Jake pulled Ethan onto the dance floor. They swayed to a slow song, Jake's arms around Ethan, their foreheads touching, and for the first time, Ethan didn't care who was watching. He felt seen, not as the art kid or the lucky charm, but as himself, loved. Whole. Enough. When the song ended, Jake took the mic from the DJ, his hand shaking but his voice steady. I want to say something, he said, the crowd falling silent. This year, I learned what it means to be brave. Not on the field, but here, with the person who makes me better. Ethan Parker, you're my lucky charm, but you're also my whole world. I love you. The gym erupted, some cheers, some gasps, a few angry murmurs, but Ethan only saw Jake, his eyes bright with tears and defiance. Ethan crossed the stage, pulling Jake into a kiss that felt like a victory. They'd fought for this moment, and no one could take it away. Years later, Ethan would look back on that night as the one that defined them. They moved to Denver together, Jake coaching youth soccer while Ethan studied art, their apartment filled with sketches and soccer gear. It wasn't always easy. Tom never fully came around. And the world still had sharp edges, but they built a life that was theirs. Ethan's final project for his art degree was a series of paintings called Lucky Charm, each one capturing a moment of their love, Jake's smile, their first kiss, the prom dance that changed everything. At the gallery opening, Jake stood beside him, his hand warm in Ethan's, and whispered, "You're still my whole world." Their story wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was a reminder that love, when fought for, could outshine even the darkest shadows. And as Ethan looked at Jake, he knew they'd keep fighting, together, for as long as they had.